Hey, what is going on, everyone? This is Mohammed, your personal PMP coach from Certify with Ease. And in this video, we're going to work on as many problems as possible so you can develop what is known as the PMP mindset. Okay, so this is the main purpose of this video. If you go through these questions with me and you practice on yourself, or you practice by yourself, you'll be able to develop this PMP mindset, which is going to help you for 80% of the exam, because 80% of the exam is situation based. And that's what we're going to focus on. We're going to be focusing on situation based questions and applying the principles that you have on your left hand side to these situation based questions. Okay? If you need a quick refresher on what these principles are and what they mean, I have another video linked down in the description below that you can watch before jumping into this video. Okay, so the learning outcomes for this video is that if you watch this video again and you practice these questions with me and you solve these questions with me, you will be able to adequately develop the PMP mindset. Okay, so we're going to jump into this video right now. I suggest pausing the video, try and attempt the question yourself. We're going to start with a couple of easy questions and then we're going to get into the more difficult and lengthier questions. Okay. The first thing I want to do before reading the question is prepare myself. I am going to read with purpose. I'm going to read in order to understand the problem statement. Everything else is irrelevant, okay? Question number 1. You have just been assigned as the project manager for a project that is already behind schedule. Stakeholders are pressuring you to deliver on time, but the team has indicated that additional resources are needed to meet the deadline. What should the PM do first? Okay. Now, the problem statement is that the project is behind schedule and the stakeholders state that you need, or your team states that you need to add additional resources in order to meet the deadline. What should we do first? One hack that I have for you guys, let's go down all the way here, is that whenever the question mentions what should the PM do first or next, look for the answer that respects principle number 1. Principle number 1 is always discuss, investigate, analyze, ask before deciding on a solution. In other words, take a step back. As the PM, you should take a step back before deciding on an actual action. Okay? So, A, request more resources immediately. This is an action. We don't want to do this right away. And we know that we never want to settle for extra costs immediately. Resources come with extra costs. So let's not pick that right away. Reassign tasks to meet the deadline. Okay, not a bad solution. That's a pretty good solution. If your schedule's not working, why not reassign the tasks? C, assess the project schedule and resources, then discuss options with the team and stakeholders. Very good. This respects principle number 1. That's what we want to look for. Reduce the project scope to meet the deadline. Okay, so reducing the project scope is never a good idea because you might have to reduce something that the client really would want to see in the product or the final result, and that might cause problems. Okay, the best answer here is going to be C. It respects principle number 1. After assessing the project schedule, the PM can then decide to request more resources, reassign, whatever the next solution, the next step should be. Okay, pretty simple question, but I just want you to understand what principle is being used here. All right, the answer here is going to be C. Let's just verify it. What's the answer for question 1? I'm using ChatGPT. You guys could use this too. It's a very good tool, and especially if you don't have a simulator with you, you can use this. Okay, so we got the answer right. Let's move on. During a project review meeting, a key stakeholder expresses concern that a critical deliverable might not meet the agreed upon quality standards. The team is confident in their work, but has not yet completed the final testing. What should the PM do next? Okay. Now we see this keyword again next. Now I want to tell you guys something. We go back to the hack. We should look for principle number 1. At times, you will not see a solution that respects principle number 1. If you see this solution, you want to select it right away. However, sometimes they might jump into the solution immediately. Okay? Let's look at what we have to do now. All right. So what's the problem statement here? The problem statement here is that we know that there's a stakeholder that's expressing concern that a critical deliverable might not meet the quality standards. What should the PM do next? Deliver the work as is and address any issue later. So we never want to do that. Okay? And the reason being is because this quality issue can actually be problematic if it materializes. Reassign the task to another team. Okay? Does this solve the core problem? It does not solve the core problem. We're not fixing the issue of quality here. Prioritize final testing and engage the quality assurance team. Okay, very good. So engaging the quality assurance team, or in this word engaging, means to discuss. You can think of it as discuss. Speaking to the quality assurance team, making sure that everything is in check, discussing the problems, discussing the potential pitfalls, and then moving forward, okay? So that's a good solution. Request more time from the stakeholders, okay? So requesting more time from the stakeholders does not solve the core problem, all right? And you might think that, okay, it might be a good idea to request more time because we have a critical deliverable, and we're not going to perhaps meet our agreed upon quality standards, and we're not even finished with the final testing. What should we do? We should request more time. We never want to request more time. Why? Because requesting more time implies that there's going to be a delay. A delay in the original project schedule. You never want to settle for a delay. The more you delay things, the more costs you'll incur. You have to pay your employees, you have to pay your contractors, you have to pay equipment fees, whatever fees there are. The more you prolong your project, the more fees there are, okay? So the best solution is going to be C over here. Prioritize final testing and engage the quality assurance team, okay? So that's the key word over here. It might not be as clear, but this is principle number 1 in action as well, okay? Over here, number 1. Now remember, sometimes they might mention what should the project manager do? What should the PM do next? What should the PM do first? You might not see a solution like number 1. You might see a direct solution, like, for example, prioritize final testing. Understand that if you see number 1, that is the answer. Obviously, read the question. If you don't see number 1, look for the best answer that solves the core problem, okay? The reason why we frame the problem is because we want to understand what we're actually solving. Number 3. You know what? Let's just answer for number 2. Let's check this out really quickly, just so there's no doubts. Prioritize final testing. There we go. Okay. Number 3. Let's move on. It's gonna get harder, guys. Don't worry. Just bear with me for a bit. A project team has identified a potential risk that could delay the project by several weeks. The team members suggest mitigating the risk by adding a contingency buffer to the schedule. What should the project manager do? Okay, very interesting. So you have this potential risk, and this potential risk can delay the project. A team member comes along and says, you know what, we should add a contingency buffer to the schedule, meaning that, we should add a couple of days here and there to mitigate this risk. Now remember, adding more days to a schedule means that there are going to be delays overall for your project schedule. If you initially plan to finish the project in 3 months, and now this risk comes along and you say that, you know what, we need to finish in 4 months, that could be very problematic. What should we do as a PM? Okay. Ignore the risk as it's not yet occurred. So we know we don't want to ignore the risk that does not solve our problem. We need to address it head on. Immediately add the contingency buffer. No, we don't want to immediately do it. Let's see if there is a better solution. Okay, remember, I mentioned this before. A delay in your project schedule is a very, very bad thing. Assess the risk, update the risk register, and communicate with the stakeholders. So this is pretty simple, right? C is going to be the answer. It respects principle number 1. Reassign the risk to another team member. So reassigning the risk to another team member does not solve the core problem. The risk still exists, or the risk will still materialize. So the best answer here is going to be C. Okay? So again, questions are easy for now. I want you to get used to this mindset principle. I want you to get comfortable with it. I want you to think that, okay, when I see this situation, I know it's principle number 1. Let's move on. A project is nearing completion, but the client requests a major change to the project scope. The change would require additional time and resources, which the project does not have. What should the PM do first? All right. You see the keyword first, or next, or do. You look for principle number 1. Accept the change and adjust the schedule accordingly. Now, what did I say before? If we accept the change, which is okay, fine, we accept the change, and adjust the schedule accordingly, we have then delayed our project and we never settle for delays. Reject the change request. Okay, so let's jump into principle number 18 all the way below. We never want to reject a request immediately or an opportunity, especially from a client. So B is not going to be the answer. Okay, so on your exam, you're not going to see reject a change request. You're going to see maybe a opportunity or a request submitted by your client, and they'll say, you know what? Don't reject it, but don't address it either. You never want to do that. That's principle 18. Okay? Evaluate the impact of the requested change and discuss with the client. This is principle number 1 in action. Beautiful answer. I'm going to go with that one, but let's just read D. Proceed with the original plan and ignore the request. So ignoring the request is going to be rejecting the request or not addressing it, okay? So the best answer here is going to be C. Principle number 1 is going to be the most popular principle that you see on the exam, okay? That's why, again, I want you to get used to it. Let's move on. Midway through a project, a team member resigns, leaving a critical role vacant. The team member was responsible for a key deliverable that is due soon. What should the project manager do next? All right. Delay the project until a replacement is found. Like I mentioned before, number 2, you never want to delay a project. Delaying is one of the worst things that you can do. Even though it happens like in real life on every single project, you never want to delay a project, okay? Immediately assess the impact and redistribute the responsibilities, okay? Not a bad solution. This person leaves, and this person was key to the team. The key deliverable is due soon, so we got to immediately assess. Take a step back. Principle number 1 in action. Assign the deliverable to the next available team member. Okay, very good. Now, some people might pick that answer. You know, C is a good answer too. Assign the deliverable to the next available team member. That makes sense. We're short on time. Who else is going to handle this deliverable? Let me find another team member. Let me allow that team member to take the responsibility. But again, the PMP wants you to choose, or the PMI wants you to choose principle number 1. You want to always take a deliberate move, a calculated move, take a step back, and then decide. So you can do B first, and then C could be a follow-up to B. Hire a contractor to take over the work. Now that could be a solution too, but the first thing you want to do is B. Always discuss, investigate, analyze, ask. In this case, assess the impact. Okay? Also, I forgot to check the question. So question 5, answer. Let's do this. Question 5, answer. All right, let's just make sure. Immediately assess the impact. Exactly. Okay? So we're good here. Let's move on. 6. A stakeholder informs you that the requirements were not fully considered in the project plan. They are concerned that the project deliverables will not meet their needs. What should the PM have done to prevent this situation? Now, this is another way that they might phrase a problem. What should the PM have done? So you have, what should the PM do first, do next, or have done? Okay. So what's the problem statement here? Stakeholder says that, you know what, the requirements are not fully considered in the plan, and that the deliverable will not meet the needs, right? Okay. What should the project manager have done? Included the stakeholder in every meeting. Okay. All right, let's move on. Let's see what else there is. It makes sense. You know, if you include the stakeholder in every meeting, the stakeholder will be informed of everything. Okay, fine. I don't like the fact that they say every meeting. That kind of implies that it's all or nothing. But anyways, let's move on. Ensured thorough stakeholder engagement during planning. Interesting. Okay, let's save this for now. Accepted changes to the project plan at any time. All right. Let me just read this question one more time for you guys, because maybe I missed a detail here. Okay. Now, you're going to see something on your exam. This is another hack. Let's move on to our hacks. When an answer mentions information not mentioned in the question, eliminate that answer. We're not talking about any change requests coming in this question over here. There's nothing that tells us that the stakeholder was asking for changes consistently, whatever it may be. Because they mentioned something in the solution that has not been mentioned in the question, do not bother, do not assume, do not break your head over it, eliminate it. C is gone. Okay? That's a hack for you guys. Reassigned the stakeholder's requirements to another project. Okay, again, this does not solve the problem. How does this solve the problem? We need to solve the stakeholder requirements problem for this specific project. Why are we reassigning the stakeholder requirements to another project? It doesn't make sense, right? So we can eliminate D. Stakeholder engagement. Ensure thorough stakeholder engagement during planning. Now, stakeholder engagement is, again, you can think of it as discussing everything with the stakeholder and making sure that everything is finalized, everything is clear cut, everyone knows, and everyone's on the same playing field, or everyone's on the same page when it comes to the project. So what happened was the stakeholder, right, informs you of the requirements were not fully considered in the project plan. They're concerned that the project deliverables will not meet their needs. What should the project manager have done? So you can include the stakeholder in every meeting, but the best answer is going to be at the beginning of the project during planning. When you're planning everything out, you speak to the stakeholder, you discuss, you engage the stakeholder, and you ask the stakeholder, what are you looking for? What are your requirements? What is this and that? You know, list me out what your requirements are. Okay, that's the best thing. I'm gonna give you another hack that's not mentioned in my file over here. But when the project management exam starts to throw out keywords that are exclusive for the PMP or project management, like stakeholder engagement, it's a good solution to consider. Do not choose it right away, but it's a good solution to consider. Okay, so just putting that out there. So let's see question number 6. Question 6 answer. Let's see what this is. Do I really gotta scroll all the way down? I don't. Never mind. Okay. Exactly, right? Ensured stakeholder engagement. All right, let's move on to number 7. All right, during execution, a project is running into budget overruns due to unplanned expenses. The project sponsor is demanding an explanation and corrective action. What should the PM do first? Okay, what should the PM do first? Keyword. Look for principle number 1. Do we see principle number 1? Request additional funding, no. Conduct thorough analysis. Okay, that could be it. Reallocate funds from other areas. Okay. No, that's not going to be it. Ignore the overruns and continue as planned. I'm assuming the answer is going to be B. Okay. Now, request additional funding from the sponsor. We never want to settle for extra costs right away. Additional funding implies there's going to be extra costs. We eliminate that. It contradicts principle number 2. B, let's put it on the side for now. Reallocate funds from other areas of the project. Okay, but they're not saying that there's a specific part in the project that requires funding. The project is running into budget overruns due to unplanned expenses. It's not a great answer to choose because it can solve. It's like a band-aid solution. It can solve the problem for a bit, but then you're gonna have problems overall. Okay, ignore the overruns and continue as planned. So we never want to ignore our problems. It doesn't solve it. It's contradictory. Okay, so I'm sure that if you guys got something like this, you don't pick it, please. Hopefully I don't have to explain further, but don't choose an answer like this. It's basically the PMI giving you a freebie and saying that, you know what, don't choose this. The best is going to be B. Conduct a thorough analysis of the budget overruns, and then you have a better idea of what you can do. Maybe you can actually reallocate funds. Maybe you need to request additional funding. We don't know. We need to conduct an analysis first, okay? Move on. Question 8. A project team member reports that a key supplier has missed a critical deadline, potentially delaying the entire project. The supplier blames the delay on unforeseen issues. What should the PM do next? Terminate the contract with the supplier. Okay, not going to really solve the issue. We run into this issue of, let's actually frame the problem first. The key supplier has missed the critical deadline. It can delay the project. Okay, supplier blames the issues on unforeseen issues. Supplier blames the delay on unforeseen issues. What should the PM do? Terminate the contract. In real life that would probably be the case, but right now it can be actually detrimental to the project because we're already potentially going to be delayed. Communicate with the supplier and develop a recovery plan. Okay, not a bad solution. Reassign the supplier's responsibility to the project team. Okay, I'm going to give you guys another hack pretty soon. Ignore the issue and hope the supplier catches up. Okay, again, we don't ignore issues. Let me see if I actually put this hack up for you guys. Here we go. Number 6, never give your team member an extra task that will reduce their capacity. So if you reassign the supplier's responsibilities to the project team, what are you doing? You are basically telling your team member, hey, don't work on what you are hired for. Handle this responsibility. And they have 8 hours in the day. They have their work hours. It's going to reduce their capacity. Okay. The best answer is going to be B over here. Communicate. Communicate is another key word that indicates principle number 1. Communicate or engage with the stakeholder or the supplier and develop a recovery plan. Okay, your supplier in this case is going to be the best person to speak to because your supplier is your supplier and the issue has to do with suppliers. Okay, so let's just check this one. Question 8. Oh, I don't think I did 7. 7 and 8 answers. Okay. Okay, so yeah, we got both of these right. Again, pretty simple, but again, we are just getting comfortable with the mindset. Okay, look, the questions get longer as we proceed. So number 7, number 8. Okay. A project team member reports that a key supplier has missed a critical deadline. No, we did this. Sorry. While preparing for a project status meeting, you realize that the project is behind schedule and several milestones have not been met. The team is unaware of the delays and believes the project is on track. What should the PM do? Okay, frame a problem. Remember, when you're reading a question, you want to frame the problem. Pretty easy to understand what the problem is here because the question is pretty short, but you always want to frame your problem, okay? I'm going to skip this part because I want to get into the difficult questions, but understand what your problem is. Hold an urgent meeting with the team to discuss the schedule slippage, okay? Discuss, I like this key word. You're taking a step back. Principle number 1. You are discussing to collect and investigate the issue. Continue with the meeting as planned and discuss the delays later. Okay, so we never want to discuss a delay later. We want to take a proactive step. If we discuss it later, it can result in more delays. Adjust the project schedule without informing the team. So the second part kind of gives it away. We want to inform the team of everything because they know better than us. We are the project manager, but they are the ones that are actually putting the paint on the walls or putting the hammer. How do you guys say this? Putting a hammer to the nail. My apologies. My English expressions are not that great. But they're the ones doing the work basically. Okay. Continue with the meet. I'm sorry. Adjust the project schedule. Okay, fine. Blame the delays on external factors. Okay, we know that's not going to be the solution, right? The best one's going to be A. Hold an urgent meeting with the team to discuss the schedule slippage. All right, let's move on. The project is in the closing phase, and you've discovered that some project documentation is incomplete. The project team is ready to move on to the next project. What should the project manager do? Okay. Now, let me teach you guys something. When it comes to a closing phase, you always want to properly conduct the closing phase. Whether your project is terminated early or not, it doesn't matter. You always want to go through the closing phase. Okay? Why? Because you need to release everything. You need to sign off on the paperwork, on the contracts. You need to release your team. You need to release the contractors, whatever it may be. You need to tie up the loose ends, basically, before you move on. Finalize all required documents before closing the project. Okay, that's a good solution. Close the project and leave the documentation for later. Allow the team to move on and complete the documentation yourself. Ooh, okay. Okay, interesting. Ignore the incomplete documentation and it's not critical. So we can eliminate B and D, right? D, obviously, we don't want to ignore anything. It doesn't solve the problem. Close the project and leave the documentation for later. Okay, so again, like I mentioned before, we want to document everything, sign off on everything, and then close the project. So B is out. We're mixing up the steps here. A and C, which one is the best answer here? Finalize all required documents before closing the project. But the team, they want to move on. They're ready to move on to the next project. Allow the team to move on and complete the documentation yourself. I mean, C makes sense, right? We should allow the team to move on to the next project so the project can get a head start. Wrong. You want to finalize all required documents before closing the project. When it comes to finalizing all required documents, all the documents pertaining to the team's responsibilities, the team's tasks, maybe if your team member is a contractor as well, have to be closed before they move on. You have to close everything before they move on, or there could be problems. There could be issues. For example, let's say in your team you have a contractor. Contractor wants to move on to the next project within your company. But you're like, you know what? Go move on to the next project. And you find out that in his contract or in her contract, it says that she or he will only work on this specific project. And you forgot to acknowledge that document. You forgot to sign off on it. So the best thing is going to be B over here. The best thing is going to be A over here. Finalize all required documents before closing the project. So what's the answer? What's 10? Sorry, 10. I'm sure they'll understand what I mean. Exactly. Okay. Pretty straightforward. All right, let's move on to the more difficult questions now. Or I didn't read them yet. The longer questions. Let's see what we can do. Now, on the PMP exam, you're not going to get questions. You are going to get some questions this long, but not as many. Okay? But if you get used to it, it's always beneficial for you. All right, let's go. You are managing a large infrastructure project that involves multiple stakeholders, including government agencies, contractors, and local communities. Recently, there have been delays due to permit issues and a lack of coordination between contractors. Additionally, local community has raised concerns about the environmental impact of the project. The project is already behind schedule and you are under pressure to deliver on time. What should the project manager do first? Okay, so this is a loaded problem. There are delays because of permit issues, lack of coordination between contractors, and you got your local community. Let's just say they're protesting. They're raising concerns. The project is behind schedule. You got to deliver on time. What should the PM do first? Don't get overwhelmed. Let's look at the solutions. Accelerate the work schedule by increasing the number of contractors on site. Could be a solution. We're behind schedule. Might as well hire more people, right? We never want to settle for extra costs immediately. Let's see what else there is. Remember, we're looking for principle number 1. Engage with the government agencies to expedite permit approvals and ensure compliance with regulations. Okay, this respects principle number 1. Engage with government agencies. Okay, but what is it asking us to do? Expedite permit approvals. Okay, that solves the delay with the permit issues and ensure compliance with regulations. Okay, fine. Makes sense. But what are we doing about the what is it called? The local community. has raised concerns about the environmental impact of the project. What are we doing about this local community? So it solves a part of the problem. It's a problem, but not completely. Remember, we want to solve the entire problem and choose the best solution. So it's not eliminate it right away. Let's leave it for now. Conduct a stakeholder analysis to identify all key concerns and develop a comprehensive communication plan to address them. Okay. Conduct a stakeholder analysis. So we have what? We have problems with what? We have problems with stakeholders, government agencies, contractors, local communities. Remember, who is a stakeholder? A stakeholder is anyone that can influence the project directly or indirectly. Your government agency can directly influence your project, but the local community might indirectly influence your project, right? Unless they're the oil protesters. They'll probably start spraying your project down with some red paint or whatnot, right? Bad joke there. But anyways, directly or indirectly, they are put in the stakeholder register, okay? And they have to be analyzed. So conducting a stakeholder analysis will give you more of an idea of who they are, which is principle number 1 in action. Remember, we're not looking for these keywords: discuss, investigate, analyze, but conducting will give you that information to make a more sound decision, right? Develop a comprehensive communication plan to address them, to address all of these guys, to address all of these people, okay? The answer I'm going to go with is C. C is a better answer than B. B is a close answer, but B does not solve everything. C, on the other hand, only solves the community's environmental concerns. Okay, so we want to go with C for now. So what's the answer? Remember, one more other hack. Remember what I mentioned? They mentioned a project management term over here, so it's a good solution. What's the answer? What's 11? Okay. Taking a little bit long, but it's okay. We're getting used to these answers, so you guys could answer the questions adequately. Okay, so yeah, we're good. 11. Let's move on to 12. You are a project manager for a software development project that is following an agile methodology. The product owner has requested a significant change in the middle of a sprint, which could impact the sprint goal and delay the delivery of the current increment. The development team is concerned that implementing the change will cause scope creep and affect the overall project timeline. However, the product owner insists that the change is critical for the project success. Oh, this is important. Wow. This is a very, very important question. You need to understand this. Okay. We never, when the sprint starts, there are no more changes that are coming in. So the sprint starts. Someone could come along and say, hey, we should change, I don't know, the color of this dashboard to something else. No, there's no more changes. When the sprint is over, then recommend your changes. However, there are some exceptions. When there is a change that happens, or when there's a change that comes along that can impact the project to the point, right, where it's critical. Okay, so over here, critical for the project success. So for example, the government comes along and says that, you know what, we are changing the laws pertaining to your project. You have to take a step back and implement that change immediately in your sprint, or your whole project is going to fail. So when it's critical to the project success, you need to consider it. Okay? So let's look at the solutions. Implement the change immediately to satisfy the product owner. Okay. So we don't want to, when they say immediately, it's always a red flag, like don't jump into conclusions or solutions right away. Let's see what else there is. Reject the change and continue with the sprint as planned. So if someone is very rigid, and if someone has studied their theory very well, they might actually pick this. But you have to understand that you can still override and say that, you know what, we're going to accept this change during a sprint, especially if it's for a critical reason. So I'm not going to reject it. Okay. Facilitate a meeting between the product owner and development team to discuss the change, assess its impact, and decide. Okay, that's gonna be the answer, right? We can kind of get the feel of it right now. C, principle number 1 in action. Escalate the issue to senior management for resolution. So we don't want to escalate to anyone. We don't run to anyone. This is principle number 8. No running to management, sponsors. We solve our own problems. So C is going to be the best answer. C is going to be the best answer. Question. I'm gonna show you guys the answer at the end. Actually, no. You know what? Question 12. Just to make sure we get the answer right. There we go. Okay, pretty simple. But I just want to show you guys what kind of problems that you can expect on the exam and really get familiar with principle number 1. We're going to change it up a bit after the 15th question mark. During a project to launch a new product, you discover that 2 of your key stakeholders have conflicting interests. The marketing team wants to launch as soon as possible to capitalize on a market opportunity, while the engineering team is concerned the product is not fully tested and may have quality issues if rushed. Both teams are highly influential, and their disagreement is causing tension within the project. What should the project manager do? Okay, so you have a conflict between your team members. One side is saying we should launch, the other side is saying we're not ready to launch. What should we do? That's your problem statement. Don't make it complicated. Side with the marketing team and push for an early launch. This is going to create unnecessary friction within your team. So we never want to do this. Never create friction in the team. But anyways, let's move on. Support the engineering team and delay the launch until all testing is complete. Again, what's the reason? We never want to create friction in the team. Let's move on. Let's see if there's a better solution. Organize a meeting with a team to discuss their concerns, facilitate a compromise, and agree on a balanced approach that considers both quality and market timing. Okay, very good. Very complete answer. Principle number 1. Escalate the issue to the project sponsor for a decision. So we never want to escalate it. Best answer is going to be C over here. Okay, you're going to see a lot of these. You're going to see a lot of these. Maybe it's not going to be in your face that clear, but you're going to see a lot of principle number 1 in action. Okay, so question 13 answer. Let's just verify just in case. And yes, we are good. Number 14. All right, you are managing a complex project involving multiple vendors across different geographical locations. Recently, one of the vendors has failed to meet a critical milestone, citing delays in receiving materials and communication issues. This delay has a cascading effect on other vendors, putting the project at risk of missing its deadline. The vendors are pointing fingers at each other, and the issue is becoming increasingly difficult to manage. What should the project manager do first? So you have this issue. I'll be honest with you. I was reading this question, but I wasn't really processing anything. You have this issue. Let's just see if we can pick out some keywords here, okay? Vendor has failed to meet critical milestones, citing that there's materials and communication issues. The vendors are pointing fingers at each other. Okay, so what should we do? Because we got a problem with this whole communication and receiving materials on time. Penalize the vendor responsible for the delay to set an example for others. Okay, yeah, fine. But how does that solve the root problem? We still have this issue of this delay that can potentially delay our entire project. What are we going to do about this? Conduct a root cause analysis to identify the underlying issues causing the delays and address them. Okay, I like this, okay? Root cause analysis is one of our tools that the PMP loves to mention. Principle number 5. And with the root cause analysis, we'll have a better idea on what we should do. So it's like principle number 1 as well. Replace the vendor with another vendor that can meet the project's requirements. Okay. Whatever, could be a solution, but it doesn't solve our core problem immediately right now. We need to understand why. We need to understand the delay and the problems that we're facing right now, right? And then find a solution towards it. Accelerate the project schedule by demanding more from all vendors. Okay? The best solution is going to be B. Once we have an idea of what the root cause is, we'll be able to then make a plan that completely solves that root problem. Okay? Number 15. Your project is in the execution phase and a major stakeholder has requested a significant change to the project scope that will require additional budget and time. You know what we're going to do? We're going to skip this problem. We're just going to jump into the solutions. Implement the change, and you tell me which principles, if any, does this contradict. Implement the change immediately to satisfy the stakeholder and sponsor. Okay. So implementing the change immediately, taking an action before assessing. I don't want to choose this right away. I want to see what else is available. Reject the change. So we never reject the change. Principle number 18. Perform a detailed impact analysis to assess. I know that's going to be the answer. Okay, but let's move on. Let's keep reading. Assess the implication of the change on the project scope, budget, and timeline, and present this analysis to the sponsor and stakeholder for a decision. Very good. Very complete. Seek additional funding and time from the project sponsor to accommodate the change. Okay, so we don't want to seek additional funding right away. There's a principle number 2. And time, that means there's going to be a delay. If we want more time, that implies that there's going to be a delay. We never want to do that immediately. That's like our last resort. C is going to be the best answer. Okay. Question 14 and 15. Look at the answers. Exactly. There we go. All right, cool. So we're going to do something a little bit different moving forward. We warmed up with a couple of mindset principles. Now we're going to work on some problems that are a realistic representation of the exam. So prior to this, we worked on a couple of exam simulator questions using ChatGPT. But right now, we are going to work on questions that closely resemble the exam. Okay? We are going to use the mindset principles to work on 30 questions, and we're going to dissect these questions as much as we can. If you get accustomed and if you learn how to use these principles to answer these questions, this is enough for you to take on 80% of the exam. So really pay attention, attempt these problems by yourself, and let us move on. Okay, so don't be like one of those people that start these questions and then 2 minutes later they get distracted and they go on YouTube Shorts or TikTok or whatever and waste their time. Let us stay focused. Let us get through these questions and let us develop the PMP mindset. All right. I'm going to show you the methodology that I teach all my students. And if you're interested in the course, there's a link below in this description to link to my course. I'm going to show you what I teach my students so you guys can implement it as well. Okay. Let's read the question. A new software application is being developed for a company's internal use, and it is now in the final testing phase. As the project approaches its deployment date, the project manager realizes that both the development and IT support teams are struggling to navigate and manage the software effectively. This lack of familiarity and proficiency increases the risk of the deployment being delayed. The first step when answering a PMP situation-based question is what? The first step is to frame the problem. The problem is usually located at the end of the situation. The problem is there's a lack of familiarity and proficiency. And because of that, there's a risk of the deployment being delayed. This is our problem that we're going to have to solve. The next step is to eliminate the answers that contradict our principles. Okay, so let's look at our answers right here. We have assigned, what should the project manager have done to avoid this situation? Cool. Assign a dedicated support team early in the project. Okay. Included comprehensive training for the software in the project plan. Okay. Modify the software to better align with the project's the team's capabilities. Fine. Organize a collaborative session between both teams to address the issue. Okay. None of our principles here are being contradicted. None of our principles are being contradicted. So the last step is to choose the answer that completely solves the root problem, that completely solves our problem that we have framed. Okay? The problem, like I mentioned before, was what? There's a lack of familiarity and proficiency, meaning that there's a training problem, meaning that they don't have the skills, the understanding of how to deploy this specific project or whatever it may be, right? This IT project. Which answer solves this problem? Assign a dedicated support team early? Not necessarily. Include a comprehensive training? Yes, that solves it. Modify the software to better align with the team's capabilities. Sometimes you can't modify the software. You have to make your team more agile to fit and align themselves with the software, right? Organize a collaborative session between both teams to address the issue. That could work too. But the thing that solves the core problem is include a comprehensive training for the software in the project plan. This is a pretty rare problem because it doesn't mention any of our principles. However, no matter what, you always want to choose the answer that completely solves the problem. When you are reading the PMP questions, it is absolutely essential that you read with purpose. Okay, let's look at the answer. I'm just going to put it here. The answer is include comprehensive training for the software in the project plan. Let's move on. Any questions, you can always comment below this video and I'll get to it as soon as I can. In a lessons learned workshop, a stakeholder expressed concern that the project was unsuccessful because it failed to deliver the anticipated business value. What should the project manager do to address this concern? Okay. Problem statement is what? Problem statement is you have this stakeholder complaining that we did not reach the anticipated business value. I'm going to give you a little hack here, a little trick here, but let's just read the solutions first. Review the project management plan task with the stakeholders. Okay, I don't see how the project management plan is going to help, but let's move on. Review the project management plan budget with the stakeholders. Again, I don't see how the project management plan is going to help. Moreover, the budget. Review the business benefits realization plan with the stakeholders. Okay, that sounds good. Review the communications management plan with the stakeholders. Again, it's not a communications problem. This is why it's so important to frame the problem. We are talking about the business value not being realized. The answer that completely solves it is the business benefits realization plan. The business benefits will tell you more about the business value, especially of what was anticipated in the beginning of the project. Now, this is not really your traditional situation-based question, but it's a very easy question to get right. Again, you frame the problem and you pick the answer that completely solves the problem. Okay, let's move on. Let's see what this answer is. Yes, so we have C. We are correct. Okay. A large infrastructure project is underway, with the contractor contractually obligated to provide regular status updates and attend coordination meetings. However, midway through the project, the contractor stops attending the meetings and submitting reports, citing that these activities are too time-consuming. What should the project manager do first? You have this contractor that has been hired, and midway through the project, the contractor stops doing his or her tasks, like attending meetings and submitting reports. Why? Because it's too time-consuming in the perspective of the contractor. What should the project manager do first? What should the project manager do first? Now remember, when they mention first or next, we want to look for principle number 1. It does not mean that you're always going to see principle number 1. You might see an action right away. However, if you do see principle number 1, you want to choose that answer. Okay? Evaluate the risk of the contractor not attending meetings and submitting reports for the remainder of the project and escalate it to the project sponsor. Okay, the last part is not a good solution. Escalate to the project sponsor. Remember, the PM does not run to anyone. The PM handles the problems. Evaluating the risk of the contractor not attending, this is a step that can perhaps follow. I know evaluating is a good step. It's assessing, it's gathering information. But evaluating the risk of the contractor not attending is kind of saying, you know what, contractor, it's okay if you don't do your work. It's okay if you don't attend your meetings. I'm just going to simply evaluate the risk of you not attending. I'm not going to, the only reason why I'm not going to choose this answer and exit immediately is because of the last part. But let's move on. Let's see what else there is. File a claim for the contractor's failure to meet contractual obligations and manage the claim through alternative dispute resolution. I have no idea what an alternative dispute resolution is. I don't think it's a project management term or PMP term for that matter. But filing a claim is an action that could potentially follow principle number 1. Right? Filing a claim is an action that could potentially follow principle number 1. We don't want to do this first. We don't want to file a claim. We don't want to fire the contractor. We don't want to cut him or her out of the project. Let's see what else there is. Remind the contractor of the contractual commitment to attend meetings and submit reports. Very simple solution. Reminding is like taking a step back. It's like discussing with the contractor about their obligations. I like this. Consult with the company's legal counsel and request they enforce the contractor's contractual obligations. Okay. Now, this could work, but again, this would be something that follows afterwards. After you remind the contractor, if the contractor is still being reluctant, you might want to do D, or you might want to do A, you might want to do B. The best answer is going to be C. Remember, we're not looking for exact keywords of always discuss, investigate, analyze, ask. We are looking for something similar to it. The whole idea is that the PM should take that step back before deciding on an actual action. Let's see what the answer is. C. Okay, that's the answer. Now, hopefully you guys are doing these questions with me. I'm not just running through these questions by myself, but you're doing it as well because it'll be so much beneficial for you in order for you to get your PMP certificate. A company is developing a new fitness tracker, but during the execution phase, the project team discovers that a competitor has launched a similar fitness tracker with comparable features at a lower price. What could have been done differently to prevent this situation? So this is similar to what should the project manager have done? Okay. So what's the problem statement here? The problem statement is simply that there's another company that has been producing the same fitness tracker for a lower price. What should we have done? A, released a minimum viable product early to collect market feedback. That's a good solution. Remember, MVP is one of the tools that the PMP exam loves to use. Okay, over here, principle number 5, MVP. Anytime you see the keywords MVP, obviously read everything, but you want to highlight that answer. That could potentially be a good answer. And MVP will allow you to gather much more market feedback, allow you to understand what the customers are actually looking for, allow you to understand who your competitors are, what's your unique selling point in comparison with your competitors. So MVP is a good solution. Increase the frequency of backlog refinement meetings. Okay, fine, you could do that, but how does that address the core problem? It doesn't really address anything. It doesn't really address the core problem. Increase the frequency of backlog refinement means the question never indicates that the problem has to do with the backlog in any way whatsoever. So I would not choose that, right? Even though it doesn't contradict our principles, it does not solve the core problem, so we can eliminate that. Implemented the Kanban method to better manage work in progress. Again, there's no indication in the question that there is problems with the work in progress. So because of this, and this is one of our hacks actually. Let me move on here so you guys can get familiar with this. Over here. Again, this is my course over here. If you guys like this course, there's so much more to this course. Book an appointment and we can discuss more about it. But over here, one of the hacks is that anytime an answer mentions, that's something else. When the answer mentions information not mentioned in the question, eliminate the answer. We don't know anything about the work in progress. They haven't mentioned anything, so we can eliminate that. Followed an iterative life cycle approach. Again, there is no mention of life cycle approach in the question, or that being the problem. So we can eliminate that. See how important it is to frame the problem. And I'm going to give you a little bit of another hack or another shortcut here. On your exam, you'll see an answer that always says, "Oh, you should have done a predictive approach instead, or an agile approach, or a hybrid approach." 10 on 10. Let's just put a little disclaimer. 9 out of 10 times, that is not going to be the answer. Just because you are working with a certain approach, and then you decide to switch that approach to, let's say, predictive to agile, it's not going to solve the core problem. The important thing is to understand what the core problem is. Over here, we're going to go with A. Let's see what the answer is. The answer is A. Okay? Hopefully you guys are getting familiar with these problems. Let's move on. All right. You're going to get maybe about 2 questions or 3 questions like this on the exam. For sure, you are going to get 1 question. Extremely easy. I'm going to show you how to easily answer this question. A company needs to implement a new governmental regulation. Although the enforcement date has been specified, the government has only provided high-level details, and changes in requirements are likely due to the uncertainty. Which lifecycle approach should the project manager use for this project? Okay. What is the problem statement? The problem statement is we have this government regulation, and we only have high-level details about it. Changes in requirements are likely due to uncertainty. Government regulation, we only know high-level details about it. A lot of uncertainty. That's our problem statement. Those are the characteristics of what kind of project? Those are the characteristics of an agile project. More specifically, they mentioned in the answer, an agile execution strategy. That's what we are concerned with. Now, the entire project, we don't know. We're not concerned with that. The entire project, there could be some predictive components. But the execution part should be agile. Why? High uncertainty. We have high-level details. You have a new policy coming in. There's too much uncertainty, like we mentioned. Agile is going to be it. Now, if we flip this question around and we say that, you know what? In the execution phase, there are things that we know and things that we don't know. Then that would be a hybrid approach. And then on the other side of the spectrum, if we say that we've seen this government policy before many times, what execution policy should we use, or what execution strategy should we use, then that will be predictive. Okay? But in this case, it is agile. On your exam, you are going to see this question. Well, not this question specifically, but a similar question. A lot of the times, the answer is going to be hybrid. But just make sure you read it carefully and you verify what they're asking you for. Remember, when something is highly uncertain, you want to take an agile approach. When something is highly certain, you want to take a predictive approach. When there's a mix of both, you want to take a hybrid approach. So here the answer is going to be agile. All right. A client is concerned about the length of time required to complete a project and has asked the project team to find ways to reduce the number of development cycles needed to deliver the final product. How should the project manager respond to this request? So the client is concerned about the length of time and wants us to basically reduce the number of development cycles, number of sprints basically, to finish the project as soon as possible. So you're reducing the number of sprints to finish the project as soon as possible. Sprints, iterations, development cycles, those are agile terms, okay? How should the project manager respond? A, encourage the team to identify and address any obstacles during daily stand-up meetings. Okay. Encourage. You might look at that word. You might say, wow, that's a servant leader characteristic. That must be the answer. No, it's not the answer. The daily stand-up is not the place for addressing obstacles. The daily stand-up is that short 15 minutes where the Scrum Master goes around and asks the team members, what did you do yesterday? What do you plan on doing today? Are there any problems that you are facing? You are not solving any problems there, though. If they bring up a problem, you are only facilitating the solution to the problem, to the solution. Okay? So, address any obstacles during the daily stand-up. Yeah, addressing it could make sense. But this is not the place where you would do this. This is not the place you would do this. Focus on delivering high-value features first and plan for more frequent product releases. I like this answer. Why? Because they mentioned the word high-value features. And remember our principle over here. Where is it? Our principle over here, and I left this as a very vague principle. Value is gold. Anytime you see the word value, business value, value in general, value-driven solution, you want to look at that answer and you want to highlight it. That could be a good solution. Focus on delivering high value features first and plan for more frequent product releases. So you have your high value features, which is probably 80% of your product, what your client really wants. Your client might not care about the 20%, so you have the 80%, and you're telling your client that, you know what, we're going to reprioritize and focus on the high value features first. In that way, you can shorten the sprint because you're focusing on less things. And you are releasing the product. You're having more frequent product releases. Why? So you can gather value, you can gather feedback as you progress, and so you can make your features more valuable. Imagine you have this feature, you release it through a frequent product release, and your customers say that we don't really like it. So that's not valuable. So you can reiterate and reprioritize your backlog to figure out what is more valuable. Okay, that's a good solution. I like it. Have the team reassess the project timeline to explore options for quicker completion. Now, technically speaking, C follows principle number 1. Reassess, taking a step back. Reassess the project timeline to explore options for quicker completion. Quicker completion, finishing something quicker, does not mean that you're finishing it with quality. Does not mean that your product is going to be valuable. If the question mentioned, have the team reassess the project timeline to explore value-driven options, that could be a good solution. C is a good solution when it starts off, but just because you're finishing a project quicker does not mean that that's the solution you want to go with. Be very, very careful. Okay? I'm not going to pick C. B is a better answer. Concentrate on completing high-risk tasks early to shorten the overall development cycle. What's the correlation between high-risk tasks and shortening the development cycle? How do we know that the high-risk tasks are the longest tasks? How do we know that completing them will shorten the development cycle? There's too much uncertainty in that question. It doesn't make sense, and it doesn't solve the core problem. The best one that's going to effectively solve the core problem, taking a value-driven approach, is going to be B, over here. There we go. All right, let's move on. Again, any questions, any concerns, any comments, make sure to comment below. I'll get to it as soon as possible. This takes time to develop the PMP mindset. It takes time, but once you have it, you are good to go. An organization is set to deploy a new digital solution that will significantly enhance purchasing services. The project manager has meticulously planned all activities to ensure a smooth integration and successful launch. However, there is a potential risk that a partner system may become unavailable, which could disrupt the project. What essential steps should be taken to safeguard the success of the project? In other words, what should the project manager do? So what's our promise statement here? Promise statement is simple. We are relying on a partner system, but it may become unavailable, and this could disrupt the project. The problem is this partner's system. The problem is the system and its uncertainty that it can become unavailable. Address the risk by requiring the partner to adjust their system settings to simplify integration with the new solution. Okay, that could work. Again, how do we know that we can simplify integration with the new solution? How do we know that we can adjust their system settings? Again, we have information that's being said in the answer that has not been mentioned in some way in the question. The system settings can be permanent. We don't know that. So I wouldn't choose this question answer right away. Let's see what else is available. I wouldn't eliminate it as well, but let's see what else is available. Regularly track the risk of the partner system unavailability and establish contingency plans in case the risk turns into a real issue. Okay, very good. You're tracking the risk, fine. but you're also taking a step back and you are establishing contingency plans. You are planning things out just in case they do materialize. Because right now, it's not it hasn't become unavailable yet. It may become unavailable, right? So B is a good solution for now. Let's not eliminate it. Notify stakeholders that full integration might not be achievable and the project timeline could be impacted. Notifying stakeholders, not a bad thing. Whatever, no problem with that. But this doesn't solve the problem. It's not taking a proactive step. You're notifying the stakeholders, okay, and you're telling them the project timeline could be impacted. But I want to know as a stakeholder, what's the solution? Tell me the solution. You're not giving a solution. D, mitigate the risk of preparing alternative plans to ensure the solution is operational even if full integration is impossible. Okay, this is a good answer. Mitigate the risk by preparing alternative plans to ensure the solution is operational even if full integration isn't possible. This is a good solution as well. Very, very good solution. Now, this is where our principles come in. Again, like I mentioned before, when you see principle number 1, you want to choose that. Which one is closer to principle number 1, B or D? B, contingency plans in case the risk turns into a real issue, is the PM taking a step back and planning everything or collecting enough information before making a move. D is action. I'm putting an action forward right away. D is a good solution. But I would do B first, and then if things get worse, do D. Mitigate the risk by preparing alternative plans. Right now, we just want to have these contingency plans available in case the risk turns into a real issue, because we are at a stage where it may become unavailable. And if it does, if we're seeing that it's going to become unavailable, mitigate the risk by preparing alternative plans. So mitigate the risk by proposing alternative solutions to ensure the solution is operational. Okay, so the best answer here is going to be B. A little bit of a tricky question, but just focus on what the question is telling. The question is saying. Let's move on to the next question. A town has initiated a project to build a community center and appointed a project manager. A suitable site was selected, and all necessary approvals and governance were completed. However, during the project kickoff meeting, it was revealed that the local artisans group, which uses the site for a monthly market, was not consulted. Okay, I already know what the nature of this question is going to be. This is going to be something about adding someone to a stakeholder register or analyzing stakeholders, but let's just continue. What should the project manager do to move forward with this project? You have this project. You're basically bothering the local artisans group with your project. That's basically the answer. That's basically the problem. Your project is interfering with the local artisans group monthly market. What should you do? Proceed with the building the center, since the artisan group does not need to be consulted, right? So this is probably probably in real life where you just ignore the artisans group, and you just keep going, like all projects do. But you don't want to do this. It does not solve the core problem. It does not address the core problem. You want to do something else that addresses the core problem full on. Document a risk related to the potential impact the artisan groups could have on the project. Okay. Again, document a risk is okay, but you want to avoid any indication of a risk whatsoever. You want to address the problem full on so that there is no chances of a risk. Documenting a risk is like accepting the risk. I'm not going to eliminate that answer. It doesn't contradict any of our principles. Let's just leave it for now. Let's see if there's a better solution. Ask the project sponsor. Okay, so we don't go to the project sponsor, principle number 8. We can eliminate that. Engage with all stakeholders, including the artisans group, to discuss the project objectives and consider the requirements. This is principle number 1. You want to do D. You want to speak to the stakeholders. You want to talk to the artisans group. You want to put them in the stakeholders register as well. They should have included that. And then from there on, you want to make a move. But D is going to be the best answer. Again, it respects principle number 1. Great. Let's move on. A PM is working in an organization that is evaluating the use of agile delivery methods. The new PMO manager, who previously had a negative experience with Scrum, has suggested the project board replace Scrum with a more traditional predictive approach. What should the project manager do in response to this recommendation? So this new PMO, this new project manager, PMO office manager, bad experience with Scrum, wants us to replace it, or wants us to replace this entire Scrum methodology with a more predictive one. What should we do? Review the benefits realization plan to account for the costs associated with the change. All right. It's a strange solution. They have the word review, which is good, but it's jumping to a solution right away. Okay, let's just move on. Let's see what else there is. Develop a project management plan tailored to the new approach if necessary. Now, this is basically saying, you know what? We accept the PMO manager's suggestion. Let's adjust our project management plan. I don't want to do this right away. I want to try to look for principle number 1 or something similar to it. Let's just see what else there is. Create a risk management plan to address potential challenges with the new approach. Okay, again, you don't want to choose the solution. You want to see what else is available. Again, this is an action. An action that where it can potentially follow after an investigation, after assessing the situation. Revisit the communication management plan to identify and engage new stakeholders. Okay, this is not a stakeholder question. This doesn't address the root problem. So D we can eliminate. And this is a strange question. This is a very, very strange question. I would have had an answer that said, speak to the PMO and understand his or her needs. That would have been a good answer. But this is a good question, because you might get something like this. What's the best answer now? Develop a project management plan tailored to a new approach if necessary. I don't want to do this right away, like I mentioned. Create a risk management plan to address the potential challenges with the new approach. Again, I don't see this as appropriate right away. Review the benefits realization plan to account for the costs associated with the change. We're taking a step back and reviewing the benefits realization plan. Meaning, does this project manager suggestion, does it add business value to our project? And of course, you have the cost element as well, because when you are changing the project approach, you have that element in the equation. In totality, knowing the cost and knowing the benefits of his or her suggestion, does it create enough benefit or value in the project to move forward with it? That is why reviewing the benefits realization plan is a good solution before doing anything else. Reviewing the benefits realization plan will allow you to really understand the nature of the change that you are trying to do, or this PMO guy or girl is trying to do. This is like principle number 1, where you're taking that step back, you're reviewing everything, you're gathering that information before deciding on a move. This is a strange question, I'll admit that, but I'm going to go with A. A is a good solution. Here we go. Okay, again, strange solution. I would rather have it something of the sort of, discuss with the PMO and see what his or her needs are and then make a move. But the best answer, the closest answer here is going to be A. All right, let's move on. A critical project milestone was missed because a team member failed to complete their task on time. This led to a tense discussion during a demonstration for the end users. What should the project manager do next? All right. So a team member failed to complete their task on time. Led to a tense discussion during a demonstration for end users. People conflict. Situation with a person. What should you do next? Address the issue with the team member in private one-on-one meeting. Very good. I like that. Ask the team member to explain the delay during a team meeting. I don't like this for one reason. I'll explain it soon. Review the human resources policy to determine appropriate corrective actions. Okay, but we never want to do this right away, but I'll explain soon. Escalate the performance issue to the team member's functional manager. Okay, so very easy questions. You are going to get something like this on your exam a couple of times for sure. Very, very easy. Just remember this principle. When there is a problem with one of your team members, you never want to choose a solution that's going to create friction. Here, principle number 3, friction in the team. Explaining or making the team member explain the delay during a team meeting is going to make this team member seem lower than everyone else. Imagine we have this big team meeting and I say, hey, John, Mary, Joseph, Caitlin, whatever you want to say. Why is your report late? And then you have maybe 10 team members all like, oh man, it's gonna really humiliate this person. You don't want to do that. It's gonna create friction. Review human resources policy, determine appropriate corrective actions. You could do this, but this is not something that you want to do immediately. We're looking for the first step. Escalate the performance issue. So we don't want to escalate it. Again, it's going to cause friction. And also, we don't want to run to other people. We want to solve the problem ourselves. The best way to solve an issue with a person is a one-on-one meeting. Remember that. One-on-one, private meeting. Keep the problems between yourself and the person. No one else has to know. Easy. Very easy points. Don't forget that. I love it. Every time I get those questions, I love it. On my exam, I got maybe 3 of those questions. I was like, man, yes. I knew the answer to all of them because just follow that rule. Very easy. A nonprofit organization that adopted agile practices a few years ago is looking for a more effective way to ensure that increments produced in each sprint meet quality expectations of their beneficiaries and stakeholders. Okay. What should the project lead recommend? All right, so a nonprofit that adopted agile practice a few years ago is looking for a more effective way to ensure increments. Okay. We want to make sure that increments, or basically how much of the product is completed after each sprint, meets our quality expectations. What should we do? What should the project lead recommend? Develop a more detailed and comprehensive template for definition of done. Okay. Allocate a higher percentage of time for testing each backlog item. Now, is the time that we allocate, is that the problem? A higher percentage of time to testing each backlog item. If we dedicate more time to test each backlog item, will that meet our quality expectations? There's no indication of that in the problem. There's no indication that the problem says that we don't spend that much time and this is why that's causing a problem. We don't know if this correlation is true. And because of that, let us not assume. Let us just eliminate that answer. Conduct more frequent sprint reviews with a wider range of stakeholders. Again, same principle here. We can conduct more frequent sprint reviews, fine. But has the question mentioned that we are only validating our ideas with one stakeholder? And this stakeholder doesn't really know anything? C is not going to be the answer because we cannot verify if C is true or false. Why? Because the question doesn't indicate anything that makes us believe that C is true or false. D, establish a quality assurance team that operates independently from the development team. Again, I love this principle so much because it works all the time. Number 1, your development team, if you think about it, the team that's making the product are going to be amongst the best people to assess quality. Number 2, there's no indication in the problem that the development team sucks at quality assurance, that they're not able to properly assess it. So because of that, we can eliminate it. Always remember that. This is one of our hacks that we alluded to. When the question or the answer mentions something not mentioned in the question, don't overthink. Do not assume. Just move on. The best answer here is going to be A. What is the definition of done? The definition of a done is almost like an agreement where you sit down with your stakeholders, your team, yourself, and you decide collectively what should our final product look like. When you have that, you have a certain quality expectation. And you are working towards that. When you have it more detailed, then you're able to better meet those quality expectations because you're able to better understand what is required. A is going to be the answer. All right, let's move on. All right, one more thing that I forgot to mention. I think I mentioned it before. When an answer mentions a project management term, like DOD, definition of done, or stakeholder register, it's a good indication. Not all the time, but it's a good indication that could be the answer. They want you to answer with PMP terms. All right, A. All right, yeah, A is the answer. A large project requires a new equipment to support its execution. The procurement manager informed the project manager that the delivery of the new purchased equipment will be delayed. The project manager is concerned that this delay will directly impact the project schedule. What should the project manager do next? Okay. Newly purchased equipment will be delayed. So there's a delay in equipment. What should we do next? Confirm the details and revise the risk management plan accordingly. Okay. I like this step. Revise the risk management plan because we know there's going to be a delay. Confirming the details. This could be correct, but I feel it's redundant because we know that there's going to be a delay already. Anyways, let's not eliminate it. This could be the answer. Update the risk register and discuss the situation to the project stakeholders. Very good. I believe that's the answer. You're updating the risk register. Remember, there's a PMP term here or project management term, risk register. So it could be a good solution. And you're discussing. So you're taking a step back. You're discussing. So you're simply saying on your project, in your risk register, you're saying that there's a potential delay or there is going to be a delay because of the equipment, and you're filling in the details. And then you're discussing this with the project stakeholders, potentially for mitigation strategies. C, investigate the option of sourcing secondhand equipment to prepare for potential delivery delays. Now, this is a step that can follow B. Remember, what should the project manager do next? We are looking for the first best solution. And the first best solution is usually 99% of the time is principle number 1. D, notify the project sponsor. So again, we don't go to the project sponsor. This is principle 8. And we solve the problems by ourselves, right? The best answer here is going to be B. A was pretty close. It's just that the first part kind of got me. Confirm the details. Why confirm the details? Pretty redundant. Let's see what the answer is now. The answer is B. Great. A project manager has just taken over a new project. In the first meeting with the project team, the project manager learns that all the management plans and documentation for the project are missing or have not been developed. Project manager takes over. Project management plans are missing or they have not been developed. What should the PM do? That's a problem statement. Ask the stakeholders to create all the necessary project documents so the team can continue their scheduled work. Okay. I wonder who these stakeholders are though. But okay. Let's move on. Let's see what else there is. Work with the project team to develop the project management plans and then share them with the stakeholders. Okay, let's leave that. Focus on continuing the scheduled tasks to prevent delays, leaving the creation of the project documents for later. This doesn't address the problem. We want to pick a solution that addresses the problem. And if you think about it logically, if we don't have the project documentation, meaning the plans, how do we know what to do next? We're going to be lost. We're going to be making a whole bunch of mistakes. D, reuse and adapt management plans and documents from previous projects to save time and keep the project on track. All right, that could work. But how close are these previous projects to the project that we have, even if we adapt it? The best solution here is going to be B. Work with the project team. Why? Check this out. 7, your team members are your experts, not you. Make every decision with them. Your team members are going to know how long a certain process is going to take. Why? Because they're the ones building the product or building making the project into creating the project and putting it into existence. You want to work with them to develop the plans, and then you want to share them with the stakeholders. Your project team is going to know is going to have the best pieces of information for you in creating this plan. So remember this principle number 7, your team members are the experts. So answer is going to be B. Common principle. All right. Just remember that your team members are the ones that you should always consult with. Project manager is a manager. He's a leader or she's a leader. They're not the experts. Remember that. When you're managing a software development project, you're not the one coding. You're not the one spending hours and hours and hours of your time on the computer screen. You have developers and programmers and software engineers for that. Next question. Contract terms used during the tender phase for a new healthcare facility must be revised before signing with the successful bidder, as the terms have been amended to comply with new financial regulations on company tax. Which approach should the project manager take to implement this amendment? Okay. So we have this, what is it called? This contract has to be revised before signing, and it has to comply with new financial regulations. Sign the contract under the original terms, but allow the successful bidder to submit a revised contract price. It doesn't really solve the problem. It actually goes against it. We're revising. We have this contract term, and it has to be revised. If it has to be revised, why are we going to sign it under the original terms? Anyways, it's a kind of weird question, but let's just move on. Let's see what B tells us. Update the contract terms and sign the revised agreement with a successful bidder. Okay. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. Update the contract terms and then sign it. But how? How are we going to revise it? So it is a solution, technically speaking, but it doesn't really dive into it. It just repeats what we're trying to do. Let's just skip it for now. Retender the entire project scope due to the significant changes in the code. Okay, no. We're not going to change the entire project scope just because there's this new contract terms. That's going to destroy our project. Imagine every change that came along, whether it be a contractual change, a government policy, whatever it may be. We're not going to change our entire scope. Our scope is what we are aiming for in our project, what we need to complete. Let's move on. Discuss the amended terms with successful bidder to evaluate. Oh, okay, this is principle number 1 in action. This question was a little bit weird, but again, we're not assessing the question, the quality of the question. We're trying to use the principles. Discuss the amended terms, taking a step back, discussing it with the successful bidder, and moreover, evaluating their impact on the contract price. This is principle number 1 in action. You gather enough information with letter D, the solution D, and then you're able to actually move and choose a solution and take action afterwards. Answer here is going to be D. See how powerful these principles are? Like sometimes you might not even understand what the question is asking you for, but once you see one of these principles, you're like, yeah, that has to be the answer. Okay, so looking at the solutions, and this is not a situation-based question, but let's just do it. Oh, I see a key word here, business value. Principle number 5, but let's just read the question. That's one thing. Don't just circle answers, or on your exam, don't just choose answers. Unless you're really running out of time, then you have no choice, but read the question carefully. A project team is conducting sprint planning. Based on the estimated effort, it is likely that most, but not all, of the items included in the sprint will be completed. The product owner seeks the project manager's advice on how to prioritize the backlog items. Okay, now this is a a little bit of theory here. But the backlog items are always prioritized based on business value. Always, always. What is business value? Now that depends on the company, that depends on the project, that depends on different situations. We want to choose the most value-driven approach. Principle number 5. The answer is going to be C here. I'm not going to get into the other solutions because, again, like I mentioned before, when prioritizing the backlog, when prioritizing everything actually, not just the backlog, but this question asks you for the backlog. So when prioritizing the backlog, you want to choose business value over anything. Business value is so broad. It could be, usually it's always about financial gain, but it could be about brand awareness. It could be about whatever it may be, right? But it comes down to business value, what the organization values. Pretty simple solution or question. Not much to think about there. Okay. My eyes just look at A, root cause analysis. I like that. Why? Because it's one of the tools that the project uses, root cause analysis. Actually, I might do that, just to speed things up. The next question, I'm going to try not to even read the answer. I'm sorry, I'm going to try not to even read the question. I'll show you how powerful these principles are. Hopefully it works. A project manager has received feedback from stakeholders expressing concerns about inadequate communication regarding project progress. Despite providing weekly status reports to the project management office and adhering to the standard communications management plan, stakeholders still feel that communication is lacking. What should the project manager do to improve communication with the stakeholders? There's a communication problem. Inadequate communication regarding project progress. What should we do? Conduct a root cause analysis to identify why the current communication approach is not effective. Very good. Okay. I like that. Once you know the root cause, you're able to properly assess the situation and properly put forward a solution. B, confirm that all concerned stakeholders are included on the distribution list for status reports. Okay, that could be good, But how do we know that's the problem? What if all the stakeholders are already on the distribution list? Now, what I'm doing is I'm comparing B with A. Since we know that there's A, I'm comparing B with A. A follows principle number 1. I want to do that first. C, propose a change request to implement an online collaboration tool to enhance communication. That could be a solution that follows A. If we see that, we have so many stakeholders all around the world and we need to figure out a better method, that could be a solution. But A is what we want to lean towards first. D, provide physical copies of status reports and verify stakeholders have received and reviewed them. Again, we want to do A first to really understand what the solution is and then move on to either B, C, or D. In this case, the best answer is going to be A. Root cause analysis, guys, is one of the most powerful tools that you can use in general. But anytime there's a problem and they mention root cause analysis, choose that solution. Read it, but choose the solution. All right, let's look at the options before we read the questions. Okay, let's have a little fun with this. Now, again, pause this, try to do it yourself, but let's just have a little fun with this. Pair the team member with an experienced colleague for daily collaboration to help them gain knowledge about the technology. Okay, so I can already understand that this question is about maybe a new team member that doesn't have that much knowledge and it's not doing that well. What should we do? Pair the new team member with an experienced colleague for daily collaboration. If we go down to our principles, was our principle or hacks? I think there's a never give your team member an extra task that will reduce their capacity. This is going to reduce the capacity of our experienced colleague. This experienced colleague probably has a whole bunch of tasks to do, and we're already reducing his or her capacity by pairing him or her with another team member. We don't want to do that. B, organize formal training sessions to ensure the team member acquires necessary knowledge to minimize the impact on team performance. Okay, fine. Yeah, you can train this team member if the problem is a lack of knowledge. Emphasize the urgency of the project and encourage the team member to invest additional time in learning the new technology. Yeah, I like C better. Why? Because we are encouraging the team member to invest additional time in learning the technology. B, if we organize formal training sessions to ensure the team member acquires necessary knowledge, we are reducing his or her capacity as well. And it's true, a team member needs training, but we don't want to compromise on that person's role in the project. We want to have something on the side. We want to encourage this team member, hey, invest a little bit of time to learn about this. D, allow the team to lead discussions during meetings, giving every member an opportunity to contribute and prepare and contribute. Okay, let's read the question now. A project manager overseeing a project with tight deadlines. During team meetings, one team member consistently remains silent. The project manager realizes that the team member lacks sufficient knowledge of the technology being used, raising concerns that this may hinder the team's overall productivity. The problem is this team member lacks knowledge. The best solution is going to be C. Encourage this team member to learn more. You ever have a project where you just need to learn more, but you also need to do your work at the same time, and you spend a little bit of time on the, maybe after work or before work, learning a little bit more about the nature of the project and maybe things that you don't understand? That's exactly what's going on here. We cannot organize formal training sessions. We could do that, but again, it's going to compromise this person's time, and this person might have a strong role in this project as well. So this is principle number or hack number 6 in action. There we go. All right. Oh no, this one already has the answer. Schedule a one-to-one meeting with a team member to discuss the performance. Okay, we talked about this, right? We never want to create friction within the team. Anytime there's a problem with a team member, one-to-one meetings are what we need to do. In an agile project developing a new mobile application, a member of the testing team has historically collaborated effectively with others. However, over the past 2 sprints, this team member's performance has noticeably declined, leading to challenges in meeting sprint objectives and impacting overall project progress. How should the project manager address this performance issue? Escalate the concern to human resources. We don't do that. We solve the problems ourselves. This is principle number 8. We do not escalate. Encourage the project team to openly discuss the performance issue with a team member during a retrospective meeting. Okay, this is good. Why is it good? And why is it not good? It's good because you're encouraging the project team to openly discuss the problem. And we talked about this before, that we don't do this. It can create friction. However, understand this as well, that agile projects are self-organizing. Where is it? I think it was here. Agile projects are self-organizing. Let the teams handle their issues. I still, as the project manager, would step in and openly schedule a one-to-one meeting and talk to this person. However, in an agile project, it is okay when people are not doing as well for the team to step in and, in an appropriate fashion, speak to this person. However, there's a little bit of a problem. They say, during a retrospective meeting. In the development cycle, where is the retrospective? It is at the end of the sprint. At the end of the sprint, it could be a bit too late. We need this person to be on his or her A game right now. So we don't want to leave this to the retrospective meeting. Instead, the best answer here is going to be D, schedule a one-to-one meeting with a team member to discuss the performance decline and explore ways to improve. This is principle number 1 as well. You are taking a step back, and before deciding on anything, you're just discussing. You're discussing with this team member. Okay? The best answer here is going to be A. Oh, sorry, not A. D. All right, let's move on. A construction company is working on building, on a building project that includes firm milestones for replacing specific components of the structure. During the execution phase, the client raises concerns that the newly installed components do not meet the agreed upon requirements. What should the project manager have done to prevent this issue? Okay. PM working on a project, and at the end finds out that something that this PM did or the team has done do not meet requirements. Anytime you have something not meeting requirements at the end, there's like one solution. And I'll dive into it a little bit later. Let's just see what the solutions are. Establish and agreed upon acceptance criteria in a quality checklist before beginning the build phase. That's the solution. Number one, you have a project management term, acceptance criteria. Remember what I said? Anytime they mention something like a project management term, it's a good solution to lean towards. Acceptance criteria is where you basically sit down with your stakeholders, with your client in this case, and you discuss basically what is the definition of done, what is DOD, but for a predictive project. You discuss what's the checklist in order for this project to be deemed as completed, or in this case, accepted. Implemented a detailed change management process and obtained approval before the build phase commenced. It's not going to solve the core problem. It's not a change management problem. This is a acceptance criteria problem. It's a problem where the requirements are not aligning with our agreement. Arrange for compensation to address any issues arising from discrepancies in the agreed upon requirements. No, again, this doesn't solve the main issue. Will compensation help? I don't know. Doesn't say anything about that. I'm not going to choose C. D, maintain continuous communication with the client about changes in the work plan and agreements. Oh, this is a good solution. Wow, this is a good problem. This is a very good. Highlight this problem, guys. This is very, very good. This tests your understanding of the difference between a predictive project and an agile project. D is for agile. You will maintain continuous communication with the client. Why? Because in an agile projects, your product requirements are constantly changing. There's so much uncertainty. But in this question, they clearly say firm milestones. You know, when they said this in the question, I didn't know why they said it. When I was reading it, I was like, oh, I don't think that's important. It is important. You have a construction project, which is usually predictive, like 100% of the time. And they also mentioned firm milestones. So D is going to be irrelevant. It's not going to be good for this project. Now, a lot of people are going to pick D. You have to understand the difference between predictive and agile in this case. A is going to be the best answer. Acceptance criteria is something that you do for a predictive project. You'll sit down in the beginning of the project with your stakeholder, with your client in this case. You'll make this checklist up of what do we need to get done in order for this project to be accepted. This is a good solution, actually. Very, very good. All right, awesome. Let's continue to the next question. Okay. Remember, read the question, frame the problem. A project manager is preparing for a weekly risk management meeting with the client. The project manager has noticed that a task with external dependencies is delayed by 1 week. Although the PM is aware that this delay will have an impact, the exact details are not clear. What 2 actions should the project manager take? Now, this is a multiple choice question where you are told to choose more than one answer. You can expect a couple of these on your exam, but the same thing applies. We're going to apply the principles. We're going to frame the problem. We're going to choose the answers that best solve our problem. Okay? The problem statement is what here? The problem statement is that we realize that there's a task. There's a task that has external dependencies and delayed by 1 week. We're not really sure about all the details. but we know that this will have a impact. What should we do? A, discuss. I like the keyword discuss. Principle number 1, but let's continue. The issue with the external supplier's authority to understand the cause of the delay. All right, awesome. Let me just go back to the question and let me see if there's something about the external supplier. The project manager noticed that a task with external dependencies is delayed by 1 week. Although the project manager is aware that this delay will have an impact, the exact details are not clear. Okay, this is very interesting. Now, you might jump and choose the solution. I almost did as well. It could still be the solution. However, there's no indication in the question that the problem stems from the external supplier's authority. I'm just going to read it one more time because I think I missed something because it's such a good solution. I read it again. There's nothing like that. If the question said discuss the issue with the stakeholders, let's say for example, and understand the cause of the delay, I'm choosing this right away. However, they mentioned a piece of information in the answer that has not been mentioned in the question. Remember our hack. Anytime this happens, you eliminate that answer. This is a very tricky option, but let's leave it for now. Remember, we have to choose 2. Review lessons learned from similar projects to identify potential risks and mitigation strategies. This is a good solution. However, how do we know that a similar project has been done in the past? Again, a piece of information that has not been mentioned in the question has been mentioned in the solution. Eliminate it for now. Gather additional information and estimate the potential impact of delay. Beautiful. Beautiful. That's what we have to do. We take a step back. We investigate. Principle number 1. Where is that? Principle number 1 over here. Gather enough information so we can make a sound decision. So for now, I'm going to pick C. Update the risk log with the delay and address it during the meeting with the client. Okay. Yes, that makes sense. It's a risk. We can update the risk log. Remember our another hack that we mentioned. Anytime the question mentions a project management term. Well, actually, I don't think I put this. But anytime the question mentions a project management term, you don't want to choose it right away, but you want to highlight it, meaning that you should lean towards that answer. They mentioned risk log, which is exactly what you need to update when there is a risk. And address it during the meeting with the client. Yes, okay. Address it with the client so he or she is aware. Wait for the client to raise a concern before collecting more information on the delay. Now, wait for the client to raise a concern. No, we don't wait for the client. Why? Because this is a delay. If we don't address it right away, it can cause much more impact in the future. It can be even delayed longer than it needs to be. Remember again, we never ever settle for a delay. Principle number 2. I'm going to go with D and C. A is a very good option as well, but this part over here throws me off. C and D are going to be good solutions. I'm gonna mention one more thing. The only reason why we're bringing this problem to the client, in a way escalating it to the client, even though in principle number 8 we don't do that, is because this question involves the client. The project manager is preparing a weekly risk management meeting with the client. Now, if the question didn't mention anyone, let's just say the project manager is preparing a weekly risk management. Let's say a weekly risk management meeting with stakeholders. The project manager noticed whatever it may be, the whole question continues. You do not want to escalate something to the client, but because this project manager is specifically preparing for this client, then it makes sense to include the client in the solution. Okay, just want to make that clear for anyone who is a little bit confused on that. Let's see what the answer is. There we go, C and D. Okay, this is a very good question because you don't want to jump to a solution right away. Even though there are some key words there, you want to read and you want to apply what we are teaching in this short or pretty long video, I should say. Very important. Remember, external supplier not mentioned. Why choose it if it's not being mentioned? Okay. A PM new to managing agile projects notices early in the project that the team is having difficulty reaching a consensus on the scope of a feature during a sprint. How should the PM assist the team in resolving the issue? Okay, this is an agile project. Why? Because they mentioned one of our keywords. I mean, they mentioned agile project as well, but even if they didn't mention agile project, we have the keyword sprint. If you need some help over here, the keywords for agile are, should be somewhere here. The keywords for agile over here. Over here. Number 13. This is going to be important because I can already tell where this question is going. Let's continue reading. How should the PM assist the team in resolving this issue? A. Instruct the senior most team member to define the scope on behalf of the team. Okay, but at the end of the day, why are we... It's a solution. It's a solution. Senior team members are mostly the most experienced ones, but anyways, why are we allocating the specific task to them? What's so special about a senior team member? I'm not going to eliminate it right away. I don't like the question. I don't like the answer. I'm not going to eliminate it because it doesn't contradict any of our principles. So let's leave it for now. Let's see if there's a better solution. Facilitate a discussion with the team to collectively decide on the scope of the feature. Okay. So you're facilitating a discussion as a PM and you're collectively deciding on the scope of the feature. So this is collectively means that everyone's involved, even the PM is involved. Not a bad solution. Let's move on. Advise the team to log the story in the product backlog and proceed to the next feature. Okay, so what this solution does, it ignores the problem. It doesn't solve the problem. We're having problems about the scope. We're not addressing this problem. Our team members are going back and forth about the scope. We need to solve this disagreement that they're having. C doesn't solve anything. D, encourage. Okay, I like this word. It's a servant leader word. Servant leader word, where is it? Where's servant leader? Encourage. Number 3. The team to collaborate and work together to clarify their understanding of the feature. Okay, you're encouraging the team to collaborate and you're encouraging to work together and clarify, take a step back and clarify their understanding of the feature. In other words, gather more information and discuss to understand what is actually going on. And more importantly, what do we say about an agile project? We said principle number 16. Agile projects are self-organizing. B is a solution. D is a better one. Because in an agile project, you should allow your team to collaborate. You should allow your team to make the decisions. You should empower them, or in this case, encourage them to take that step forward. The best answer here is going to be D. There's 2 principles in play over here. Principle number 3, be a servant leader. And the most important one, 16. Okay. An agile team is in the early stages of the development cycle for a project and has already started delivering functionality to the customer. The team has identified several risks and is in the process of developing a mitigation strategy. What should the project manager do next? Okay, so we have several risks and we are planning a mitigation strategy. What should we do next as a PM? That's a problem statement. Make the problem statement as easy as possible for you to understand. Just make sure you have all the details in your problem statement. Again, when you're reading, you read with intent. Very important. A lot of the times on the exam, you're going to read and you're going to be finishing so many questions. You're going to be completing question after question after question, and you start losing that focus. And when you read, you realize that you weren't actually paying attention and you have to go back. This is very detrimental. It's going to take so much time away from your exam. Okay, sorry about that. So let's continue. Add the identified risks to the risk register. Prioritize them based on their potential impact. Okay, very good. Very good solution. So we're developing mitigation strategy. We have several risks. Let's not only identify these risks, but prioritize them based on their impact. Awesome. Escalate the identified risk to the project sponsor and steering committee. Okay, we don't want to do this. We don't want to escalate. Again, principle number 8. We don't want to run to anyone. We want to solve this issue ourselves. Especially when the question hasn't mentioned the sponsor or has mentioned the steering committee. Let's solve it by ourselves first. Begin implementing the risk mitigation strategy, starting with the risks that have the highest impact. Okay, yes, but if you read the question carefully, they have started. The team has identified several risks and is in the process of developing a mitigation strategy. So this is something that can follow later on when you implement the risk mitigation strategy, but we are still in the process of developing. So this does not solve the core problem. We are trying to find a way to facilitate the development of the strategy. What should we do next? D, assess. Okay, I like this word assess. This is principle number 1. Let's continue reading. Whether any of the newly identified risks have financial implications. Okay, now this is a good solution. Technically speaking, every single risk will have a financial implication because risks are usually delays. But we don't want to just restrict something to financial implications. Assess whether any of the newly identified risks have financial implications. Risks can encompass a whole bunch of different things. And as a consequence, of course, it can affect the finances, but we don't want to just restrict our risks and prioritize them based on financial implications. Imagine, for example, you have a product and the financial implication of that product or the financial impact is very low. But if you decide to not address that risk, you're going to piss off a lot of future customers, or you're going to piss off a lot of people who are then going to show up at your doorstep and start protesting. Imagine that. So we don't want to just limit it to financial implications. A is going to be a good solution because we are looking at the potential impact as a whole. We're not just saying, okay, only finances, or we're not just saying only this, only that, only A, only B. We are looking at the potential impact as a whole. And what's also really good about this solution is they mention one of the tools that we use in project management. And I mentioned this before. When you see a project management term like risk register, it's a good solution to choose. They want you to use the different tools during the exam, okay? So let's just see what there you go. A is a solution. All right, let's move on. If you're enjoying this video, please subscribe to my channel and give it a like. But the channel is growing very, very fast, and I'm extremely happy, and I couldn't have done this without you guys. So please share it, like, subscribe, and give it a thumbs up. A project manager is leading a hybrid project and working with the client to develop the project contract. The project has experienced some delays due to unforeseen technical difficulties and new dependencies, but the project manager is hopeful about recovering the lost time in the upcoming sprints. A key stakeholder inquired whether the contract deadlines will still be met. Okay, so remember, the first step is to frame the problem. There's some delays, and we've lost time, but the PM is hopeful of recovery. And then you have stakeholders saying, are we going to meet our contract deadlines? That's our problem. We have those delays. We're still sure that we can recover. And now a stakeholder comes along and says, are we going to meet our contract deadlines? What should we do first? Review. I like this word. Again, principle number 1. Review. Taking a step back. The contract terms and deadlines to assess. Another keyword. Any risks and then confirm the status with the stakeholder. It's a very good solution. Principle number 1 in action, you're taking a step back, you're assessing, you're reviewing, and you're collecting all the data, all the information before making a decision. B, clearly communicate work in progress, reasons for delays, existing risks, and planned corrective actions. Okay. This is a good solution too. Clearly communicate the work in progress, the reasons for delay, existing risks, and planned corrective actions to properly see if you can actually meet the contract deadlines. Wow, A and B are very close. Okay, let's move on. Submit a request for additional time and budget. Okay, so we don't want to do this because number 2, we never settle for delays or extra costs immediately. Reassure the stakeholder and ensure that they are engaged in all team meetings for updates. Okay. Now again, yeah, we can reassure the stakeholder, but how? What's our proof? What's our evidence? It doesn't solve the core problem. We got to show something tangible to the stakeholder. Now let's dive into this a little bit more. What do you guys think? I'm acting as though I can hear you. But A, review the contract terms, okay, and deadlines to assess any risks, okay, and then confirm the status with the stakeholder. B, clearly communicate the work in progress, reasons for delays, existing risks, and plan corrective actions. B is the answer. B is going to be the answer. B is a much more detailed version of A. Now I like this. Review the contract terms and deadlines to assess any risks and then confirm the status with the stakeholder. But how is reviewing the contract and deadlines going to allow me to assess the risks? Instead, I can understand what the risks are if I look at the work in progress, the reasons for delay, what risks are already there, already present, and what actions do we have lined up, our mitigation strategy. So I can really inform and really tell the stakeholder that, hey, are we actually going to meet these contract deadlines? B is a good solution. It's better than A. A and B are similar. A is more I like the wording of A, and you're gonna get this more on the exam, so don't stress too much. You're gonna see something more closer to A on the exam. But clearly communicating the work in progress, that's much better. Okay? Let's see what this answer is. The answer here is going to be, there we go, B. Tricky problem, but again, the first step, you always want to frame the problem, like we said, and then eliminate the answers that contrary to the principles, and then choose the answer that best solves our core problem. Let's move on. Okay. A project team is preparing for the closing phase and planning the next phase of the project. The project team is preparing for the closing phase and planning the next phase of the project. What does that mean? The closing phase, the last phase, or am I going crazy here? Anyways, one of the project sponsors has expressed concerns about quality issues in the deliverables from the last phase. Even though the quality acceptance document was already signed, what should the project manager do? Okay. So we're preparing for the closing phase. And one of the stakeholders, a sponsor in this case, brings up quality issues in the deliverables. The quality acceptance document has already been signed. What should we do? Reopen the quality acceptance documentation to include the sponsor's complaints. Okay, very simple solution. Technically speaking, it solves the core problem. Now it's just a matter of, are we allowed to do this, knowing that the quality acceptance documents has already been signed? Schedule a quality review meeting and address the sponsor's complaints during the discussion. Okay. Review the best practices and lessons learned, incorporating them into the project plan for the next phase. Okay. So best practices and lessons learned, incorporate them into the project plan for the next phase. Again, this doesn't solve the core problem. We need to address this issue right now. Let's just leave it for now. Delay the next project phase until the impact of the quality issues has been thoroughly assessed. So we don't want to delay something. Even though we need to go back and address this quality issue, we do not want to delay. We do not want to delay. Okay? I'm going to read the question again. One of the project sponsor has expressed concerns about quality issues in the deliverables from the last phase, even though the quality accepted. Okay. Now, we are left with A and B and C. The best two answers are going to be A and B, because C kind of dodges the problem. We're not addressing it right away. We need to address this problem right away. So if you look at your solutions over here, What principle is going to be at play over here? Principle number 1. Schedule a quality meeting so we can discuss. And then if the sponsor is actually correct, then we're going to reopen the quality acceptance documentation to include the sponsor's complaints. The first step you want to do is take that step back and implement B. Very important. In this case, and I mention this always, except for the last problem. The last problem was a little bit weird. The last problem. Actually, the last problem is similar because the last problem, B, is kind of a more defined version of A. A is very vague. But anyways, don't worry too much. Like I mentioned before, you will receive much more clear questions and solutions. We made this very hard because we want to prepare you as much as possible. But B is taking a step back and discussing before actually deciding on a solution. So B is going to be the answer here. And A is something that can follow. Awesome, let's move on. A PM is leading a hybrid project to develop an app for a travel industry startup. Due to unforeseen events, new travel restrictions have rendered many of the app's features and the overall solution less useful for a significant portion of the target audience. What should the project manager do first? So we have this app that we're developing, and a lot of the app's features are going to be rendered as useless because of the new unforeseen events. So what should we do? We have a bunch of features that are not going to be helpful when it comes to our target audience. What should we do? That's a problem statement. A, release the project team and assist them in finding new opportunities on other projects. So this is a very hasty move. Releasing the project team immediately. That basically means that you are shutting down your project. It's over from there on. So instead, let's try to look for principle number 1, like I mentioned before. Anytime you have a bunch of solutions and one of the solutions is principle number 1, it is a very good option to choose. So I don't want to make this move right away. Seek guidance from the organization's management regarding the future direction of the project. Okay, that's not a bad solution. You're taking a step back, you're meeting with the organization, and you are trying to understand their perspective on how we should move forward. C, evaluate. Okay, I like this word. Evaluate the impact of the environmental changes and propose a pivot to adapt the project. Very, very good. So I would say when it comes to B and C, C is a little better because you're doing the first step of evaluating the impact. You don't want to just seek the organization's guidance. You want to actually bring them some information so that the guidance that they provide can be more meaningful. So C would be first, I would say. And then if you propose a pivot, you're using the knowledge that you've acquired from evaluating and you're formulating a plan of action. D, temporarily halt the project if it no longer offers business value and document the lessons learned. So we never want to halt a project because halting a project essentially means settling for delays. And if we settle for delays, that can mean more costs at the end. That can mean that we have to pay everyone. Our client's going to be upset. So there's a lot of things. So every time you see delay the project or something that alludes to the project being stagnant or delayed, you do not want to choose that. I'm going to go with C. C is a good answer. That's the answer. Cool. Okay, so this is a different type of question. This is a question that uses the ITTOs. You're going to maybe get about 3 questions max of this type. You might get a little bit more or it might get less. But the majority of the exam will not be in this format. A couple of years ago, the exam was in this format where they would ask you, what tool should we use next? What tools should we use in this situation, in that situation? That requires you to memorize the whole process groups chart. But now, because the exam switched, we don't need to memorize the process groups chart. Just memorize the key tools and key words that you need. And I think in one of my videos I explained which key terminology you need in order to take the exam. So a PM who is knowledgeable about the organization's industry standards notices that these standards are not adequately reflected in the deliverables. What should the project manager review next? So we have this PM who knows about the organization standards, industry standards, I should say, and these standards are not properly reflected in the deliverables. So what should the project manager review? The quality process, nope, it's not a matter of quality. Quality management plan, it's not a matter of quality again. The organizational process assets, that's the answer, OPAs, and the project charter. Now this is a question where you just have to know what these things are. The organizational process assets will tell you everything and anything to know about industry standards and government policies, for example, that affect these industry standards. So this is the perfect thing to look at. Very, very simple. Anytime they mention something about industry standards, OPAs is what you want to look at. Let us move on. OPAs. So a project team tends to extend discussions during team meetings, taking more time than necessary. This behavior is causing a frustration among other team members who feel that their time is not being respected. What should the PM do? You have your team and they tend to extend their discussions or talk more than what is required. We all know those people in our teams, right? And this is causing a lot of frustration. What should we do? A, remind the team that open discussions are important, but reinforce the need to adhere to meeting ground rules. Very good. Very, very good. Taking a step back, and before deciding on a solution, you're discussing. You're reminding the team. You're speaking to them. You're not saying right away, you know what, we are going to axe this, or we're going to take this step or that step, or we're going to fire you. You are simply taking a step back and speaking to your team members, discussing with them, and in this case, reminding them. One thing to know as well, when there's these small things like, your team is talking too much during meetings, or they're on their phones, they're not paying attention, the answer immediately is establishing ground rules. Ground rules happen in the beginning of a project where the PM establishes common rules where everyone's required to follow. So for example, no phones during the meetings, or our meetings are going to be a max 30 minutes long, whatever it may be. So I can already tell the answer is going to be A, but let's just keep reading. Ask the team member to stay focused on the current topic to maintain team efficiency. So that's kind of like A, you're reminding your team members. But ground rules is much more, it includes much more inclusive. You can talk to your team members about not only this problem, but every single other ground rule that you want to mention or you want to bring up. Encourage the team. Okay, maybe I missed something here. Encourage is a good word. To appreciate the input from the team member as it may be valuable. Okay, so this is not the solution because it doesn't solve the core problem. The core problem is that people are taking too long discussing things, and it's causing frustration. This does not solve that problem. This, in fact, ignores the problem. You do not want to choose a solution that ignores your problem. That is why it's so important to frame the problem. Allow the self-organizing team to address the situation internally and come to a resolution. Let me ask you this question. Do we know if this team is self-organizing? Has the question mentioned anything about, let's say, an agile project or a self-organizing team? Nothing, right? So we're not going to choose D. Because, again, the question mentions, or the answer mentions, a piece of information that has not been mentioned in the question. Answer here is going to be ground rules. Did I forget to put the answer? Was the answer there all this whole time? No, it wasn't, right? Okay. Okay, yeah. The answer is A. I didn't even see that. Maybe it was. A customer's technical lead discussed a new feature with the project manager, who believes the feature will significantly improve performance. The PM adds it as a high priority item in the sprint backlog. However, at the end of the sprint, not all planned stories were completed because the new feature consumed more time than expected. What should the project manager do next? Problem statement is that there's this new feature that, remember, they believe, not is certain, but they believe that it will create a lot of value in terms of performance. Project manager adds it as a high priority item, and because of that, because the team was so consumed with making this item or this deliverable, they couldn't finish the other things that were necessary. What should the project manager do next? Obtain agreement from the product owner and add the new feature to the product backlog. Okay, but it's already been added to the product backlog, so I don't see how this solves the core problem. Get approval from the project team and add the new feature to the product backlog. What are you talking about here? At the end of the sprint, not all planned stories were completed because the new feature consumed more time than expected. Yeah, why are we getting approval to add the new feature? Am I missing something? Because the feature has already been added. Customer's technical lead discussed a new feature from the project manager, who believes the feature will significantly improve. Yeah, it's already been added, so A and B are out of the question. Consult with the Scrum Master before adding the new feature to the sprint backlog. I'm so confused, guys. Why are three? I'm gonna read this again. A customer's technical lead discussed a new feature with the project manager, who believes the feature will significantly improve performance. The PM adds it as a high priority item to the sprint backlog. Oh, I'm reading. Okay, I was reading product backlog, sprint backlog. Okay. However, at the end of the sprint, not all planned stories were completed because the new feature consumed more time than expected. Okay, makes sense. But anyways, here's the thing. I'm going to break it down really simply. I saw the word review. Review the impact of the new feature on the sprint's progress and discuss lessons learned with the team. That's a beautiful answer. Number one, the product backlog is the responsibility of the product owner. You do not speak to the project team about this because the one in charge of the product backlog is the product owner. But D, look at D. D is principle number one in action completely in its most natural form. You're taking a step back, you're reviewing the impact so you can gather enough information to move forward with a sound decision. You're looking at the sprint's progress and you're discussing the lessons learned because we've already finished the sprint. So we have some information. We have some lessons that we learned because we kind of did mess up here with the team. You're discussing this so you can move forward and do better in the next sprint. The answer is going to be D, without a doubt. Okay? But just remember, for your information though, the product owner is responsible for the backlog, not the Scrum Master or not the project team. So if anyone wants to add a feature to the product backlog, they have to speak with the product owner. Very important. Okay, so this is a little bit of a loaded question. You're gonna get maybe a couple of these kind of questions where the question is pretty lengthy and the answers are pretty lengthy too. But again, use our principles. Do not be scared of these questions. A consultancy firm was selected and contracted for a project after a thorough and competitive procurement process. Several months into the project, the client questions why the consultant's contract is only 18 months instead of the full 32 month duration of the project. As a result, the project manager now faces the need to conduct an unplanned second bidding process to ensure services are covered until the project's completion. Okay, so this is not hard. It's not a hard question. You hired a contractor, supposed to be for 32 months. The contract only says 18. What should the project manager do? What should the project manager have done to prevent this issue? A. Developed a detailed phased procurement management plan that included all necessary activities and obtained client approval before proceeding. Okay. Not a bad solution. if we had a detailed phase procurement management plan, different phases, different timeline, different deliverables, and included all the necessary activities and obtained client approval before proceeding, every single person would be on board. Because again, the client is questioning why the consultant's contract is only for 18 months. So if we had his or her signature on that contract, on that document, then for sure that client would be on board. B, involve the clients in all negotiation phases with the consultancy to secure their advance approval before finalizing the contract. We don't need to involve the client in all negotiation phases. Remember that the client is usually left alone. We as a PM need to handle this. So I'm not going to choose this right away. I like A better. C, planned and negotiated a second contract with the consultancy firm for the remaining 14 months before the first contract was signed. Well, yeah, but if we did A from the get, we wouldn't have to do C, right? If we had a detailed procurement management plan that included all the necessary activities and all the the phase procurement management plan for the complete months, and the client signed it, we wouldn't have to make two of them. We're talking about the past. What should the project manager have done? If they said, what should the project manager do next? Maybe C is a good option. Established an agreement with the client on the frequency of reporting on the status of procurement activities throughout the project. So this doesn't solve the core problem. We are concerned with why this contractor's contract says 18 months instead of 32. We're not concerned with updates or reporting right now. We are concerned with this problem. A is going to be the answer. Okay. Now, you might get a little confused. Why is, Mohammed, I thought you said that we can use principles and we'll be able to. Yes, principles work, but sometimes, and again, I made this purposely difficult. I made this difficult on purpose because I want you to get accustomed to everything. So you're prepared, you're well-rounded for anything. Always choose the answer that best solves your problem statement. Go through the answers in a very logical manner, like I did over here. Why would I do C? Why would I do C when I could do A? A covers all the months. C, I got to make two contracts. So we're going to do all these kind of things. We're going to break it down very, very logically. Okay, let's move on. Okay, is that it? Are those the questions? Are we done? Oh, we are done. That's the last question. Okay, awesome. This video took me so long to make. It's the longest video so far. Listen, I'm gonna be straight here. Again, understand the logic behind solving these questions. Number one, you frame the problem. By framing the problem, you understand exactly what you need to solve. Frame the problem in your own words. Frame the problem in such a way that you understand the problem. You'll see when I frame the problem, it's very informal. That's because that's how I understand it. Once you frame the problem, you're able to eliminate all the unnecessary information. And what you're able to do next is you're able to eliminate the answers that contradict our principles or our hacks. Sometimes you might eliminate most of them. Sometimes you'll be able to spot the right answer right away, like when we see principle number 1. Sometimes you'll not be able to eliminate any of the answers. That's fine. Don't freak out. The last step is to choose the answer that best solves the problem and solves it absolutely completely. Once you're there, you are good to go. This exam is more of a reading exam than an actual project management exam. You need to read carefully and you need to select the right answer. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Remember, watch it. If you're at the end, you watched it completely, watch it a couple of times. Let it marinate in your minds. Understand what is going on. If you like this video and you want to see more of this type of video, leave a comment in the comment section below. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and give it a thumbs up. Turn on the notification bell. and I will see you in the next video. Take care and have a fantastic rest of the day. Remember, my course link is in the description below. In my course, I include everything, absolutely everything that you need in order to pass the exam the fastest and the quickest way possible. So book an appointment with me and I'll show you the course. If it fits your needs, I'll sign you up. And if it doesn't, you continue doing what you are doing. All right, let's get you PMP certified. Take care and have a fantastic rest of the day.